Travel and Things in association with Sun Destinations, iconic destinations with amazing experiences, present In Conversation With. I am your host, David Batsoffen, and my guest today is I don't want to say author, co-author of this particular book. We all know the face, Rassie, the Stories of Life and Rugby with Rassie Erasmus, written with David O'Sullivan, who is my guest. David, good morning. Welcome to you.
David, I think you can call me the ghostwriter. I think that's actually the term that is most accurately used.
Is that the terminology when your name is in fact on the cover of the book, David?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's a fair point, because a ghost would, you'd anticipate it means that you're not visible. But
correct.
Yeah, I suppose that's right. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm
right.
happy to accept co-writer. The fact of the matter is, Rassie talked to me and I wrote it.
Okay,
so
that's fair enough. The book is published by Pan Macmillan, or Macmillan, I should say, and it's available.
Pan Macmillan.
Yeah, it's available currently. So let's start at the very beginning to coin a lyric, which is a very good place to start. But I want to come at this from a slightly different angle, if you don't mind, Dave, because I tend to start a book with the acknowledgements. I always like to see who the author, or in this case, authors, are thanking and why. But then your book, or this book, goes one step further, because on the inside front page, it says here, editing by Sean Fraser, proofreading by Wesley Thompson, and you actually talk about her in your acknowledgements, Vivian Ray, who was the transcriber, whom I should imagine had a very, very interesting job translating or transcribing this from your tapes, Rassie's voice, into what I have here in my hand.
Well, so what you got in your hand is I've got to say I'm responsible for that, David.
Fair enough.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll take you through the process. If you look at the back cover, you'll see a photograph of Rassie and I. And that's the kind of thing we were doing. So in the middle there, I've got recording equipment, and that photograph was taken in Stellenbosch. He was doing some Springbok camps at the High Performance Center there. So he met me on his off days, and then we sat at a beautiful bed and breakfast, an Airbnb, and it was a guest lodge. And I put a lapel microphone on him. You can see it on him there, and I had my microphone. And then we spoke and spoke and spoke. And I recorded it all digitally on my laptop. Or we came and we did it in my office, and I've got microphones where I've got a studio set up here, and he would sit opposite me, and we would talk and talk and talk and talk, and I would record it, because I didn't want the process slowed down by me taking notes the whole time. And I did want to actually hear everything he was saying, because the biggest problem initially that I had was I needed to capture his voice. You couldn't read the book and hear David O'Sullivan's voice. You had to hear Rassie's voice.
Right.
But now Rassie also, he talks and talks. And he will move, he'll deviate, he'll go on different points. Something will catch his imagination. He'll remember a point, he'll go that way, go that way. So for me, it was pulling it all together. And because we would speak, and I promise you this, it was every session, 8 hours without a break. When Rassie wants to do something, he does it, he hyper-focuses on it. And so we would do 8 hours without a break, except for him to go for a pee. Because he's on this medication. We talk about his illness in the book.
You do, and I want to touch on that, because I mean that's quite something. If you look at the photograph, he looks healthy. You've seen him during Rugby World Cup. He looks healthy, but then he has this underlying condition, and we'll get to that at a particular point while we talk.
So one of the side effects of the medication is he pees a lot, so he'd get up for a pee. But then Vivian, I would send the audio files to the publisher, a wonderful publisher, Andrea Natras. She would then send the files to Vivian Ray, who was the transcriber. The most accurate transcription, but she would research the spelling of the names. And then every now and again, if she found something interesting, she would put in links to articles which would explain. I'll give you an example where we're talking about Rassie's father's alcoholism and how he used to self-harm. He would hit himself repeatedly. Vivian then put in links in the transcription. Oh, you might, if you want more information, here's a link. That kind of thing. I've never known, and that's why I felt she needed a credit all
proper
of her
mention,
own. And then what I would do, David, is I would sit with two computer screens. One was with the manuscript text, and one at the side, which was the transcriptions. And I would work through it and massage, and then put it into a coherent shape, pattern, form, structure, but all the time making sure I got his voice. And just one little thing about the voice, it took me a couple of goes before I was writing with his voice in mind. Then the most surprising thing happened. The more I worked with him, the more his voice was in my head. So I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I could hear Rassie and he's talking away. And the first time it happened, I lay awake 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm thinking, okay, today what I want to achieve is I want to get through this section. I need to find this. I need to research that because often there'd be a lot of background stuff I need to pull in. I went back to sleep, woke up then at 6 o'clock, which is normally the Sullivan waking up time, getting the kids up, getting them off to school. And I completely forgot everything I'd thought about 3 hours earlier. And I thought, I'm never allowing that to happen again. So the next time, sure enough, the next morning, 3 o'clock, bing, I wake up. There's Rassie's voice. I went straight downstairs, turned on the computers, and I started working. And that was my most productive time. And as you well know, you've done enough early morning radio, breakfast radio, you know that your body gets into that cycle. I've done 4 years of Kai FM's breakfast show, so waking up 3 o'clock wasn't a problem. I would get most of my work done. And so by the time I got home from taking the kids to school, I maybe had another 1,000, 2,000 words in order to fulfill the demands of the deadline. And so it was I never felt pressured and I could always enjoy it. It never felt like work.
Let's go back to the beginning of this story, if I may. When you got the phone call from Macmillan to say, we'd like you to write this book, what was the first thing that sprang to mind? Did you know Rassie at all, other than having seen him on television, perhaps, and know the backstory and the videos and the anger and all the cussing and all of that type of stuff? Or did you just think, can I really do this?
So a few of those things. First of all, I didn't know him personally, but I had reported on his career because I started doing, I actually started sports journalism and news and sport. I've never differentiated. I've always done both news and sport. So he started his career in '96. I'd done Capital Radio. I'd had my flirtation with law. I was now at 702. And so it was the year after I started working at 702 that Rassie now made his appearance. And so I followed his career as I did with any other rugby player of any form of prominence. And then obviously for the 2019 World Cup, I was at Kai FM for that. And I was actually at the World Cup in Japan as well. But I had no direct contact with Rassie in the same way that any other sports journalist. I mean, I've been to news conferences where he was and that kind of thing, but I didn't know him personally. I had built up a picture of who he was because of the odd social media post and just the maverick behavior. And he knew me from, I used to host a rugby show on SABC every Wednesday night in the 2000s. And because he's a rugby besotted man, he used to watch that show. I used to write articles for SA Rugby magazine. He doesn't read, so he didn't see those, but he knew of me. And so when Pan Macmillan, through my friend Mandy Wiener, who's one of Pan's more successful authors, one of the successful authors on Pan Macmillan's stable of many successful authors, she said, well, approach David. And then when Andrea Natras phoned me, I thought about it for, I don't know, about a nanosecond.
Yeah,
said, hell yeah.
You better believe
it. What an intriguing person. But David, I had come into the project with my own preconceptions of what he was like. And I think for most people, he's this, you would think, extroverted, loud, brash, fun-loving kind of guy. And to my amazement, I find that he's the direct opposite of all of that. And so the opening page and a half
Yeah.
is actually him setting the record straight. I'm not that guy. I'm actually this guy. I'm a quiet guy. I prefer my own company.
I was going to say we both worked with a guy in radio who was exactly like that. On radio, JB was all over the place, but get Johnny Burks in a private setting. He was the quietest human being, didn't want to get involved, didn't want to get noticed. And I was going to ask you about Rassie because he's a larger than life character. And I don't think, and maybe you've discovered this during the course of working with him, I don't think there are people in the middle ground when it comes to him. They either love him or they hate him. End of story.
Yeah,
for whatever reason.
I described him in another interview. I think it was with The Citizen. I said, particularly overseas, he's Marmite. They either like him or they loathe him. And I do think the loathing is completely unjustified. I think he gets a bum rap, and that's not me because he got under my skin, and that I'm going to bat for him all the time. I would look at it dispassionately and say, well, I can understand why people may not like him, but the reasons they give are completely spurious. So it does mystify me. But I find in South Africa, where people might have been a little ambivalent after 2019, after 2023's World Cup, he is just so universally liked now. But he doesn't see himself as this great hero, great champion. He knows he's got his own flaws. And so when we did the book, I said to him, you mustn't treat me as an author, as the guy writing your book. Treat me like your therapist, because I'm going to probe your deepest, darkest soul, and you have to tell me everything. But because it's just you and this is your book, everything I write, you will look at and you decide what to take out. If you feel it's too close to the bone, you can take it out. But let's not leave anything out. Let's look at everything, because we don't want any surprises. We don't want anybody coming going, but you didn't talk about, but you glossed over. Let's get it all out there. Basically. Yeah. So I said, let's do the censorship afterwards.
Yeah.
But then I also said to him, but I will fight you if you take anything out.
So here is my question then, was there a point, and we'll get to what you're just going to say about fighting him on point. Was there a moment where you asked a question, or you were listening to him and you said something, and there was a flash in the eyes of his eyes, and you thought, damn, I pushed the boundaries, and you were sort of moving your chair back, getting ready to run, because maybe you triggered something in him? Or
David, no, there was
across the board.
There was never a moment like that, but I did make him go to places that he hadn't been for a while, like the interrogation of the effect of his father's alcoholism and mental abuse on young young Rassie Erasmus, as he was there. You know, he's Johan, and in those days, growing up in Despatch, he was Johan. He was Honey from Johan. So the whole time, and in fact, he was giving a talk the other day in Johannesburg, and the interviewer was the commentator, Matthew Pearce, and he said, what was that process like? And he said, geez, David kept saying to me, but how did that make you feel? But how did that make you feel? And I went, yeah, that's exactly right. The whole time, what are your emotions? Don't just tell me the story.
Yeah.
What does it mean? What does it mean? And so it became deeply emotional on many, many occasions. And also when it came to the infamous Erasmus video, which earned him a year-long ban by World Rugby for criticizing the referee. I felt that he hadn't come across as he was quite hard about it. And I said, but you know that was a mistake. And I need to see some kind of almost compromise, some kind of regret, if anything. And we pushed and pushed, and eventually, I didn't force him to say it, but I got him to go within himself and go, yeah, in retrospect, I realized that I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And so he was, I took him into a place where he could reflect quite carefully about his actions and what they meant. And interestingly enough, at the time we wrote the book, which was just before the World Cup, it came out in August before the World Cup, we weren't sure if the fallout from the Erasmus video, the effect on the referees, would affect the referees in 2023. Nick Mallett had said there is a danger that the refs would be against us. And as it turned out,
they weren't.
They never were. But we didn't know that at the time.
No, obviously not. I mean, the timing was impeccable. You couldn't have wanted for a better launch for your book than the Rugby World Cup. Dish it out to all the. I would have given a signed copy to all the referees. But post the event.
And you know, one of the referees, the ref who we had the most in the World Cup now was Ben O'Keefe, and he was one of the referees. Because the infamous Rassie video came out during the British and Irish line series, and Ian Berry was the referee who was in the firing line. The second referee who was Ben O'Keefe. So he was very much personally involved in all that. While he didn't face the criticism, he faced the scrutiny in the second test match that he took charge of. And I think it goes down as the longest test match in history because everything got reviewed. He was feeling enormous pressure. And I often, when I heard, Ben O'Keefe's refereeing us in the 2023 World Cup, is he going to go, you bastards, you put me on a... And he never did. We never, ever complained about the refs.
That's the way it should be. I don't want to say glossed over because glossed over is the wrong word, but you mentioned that Rassie comes from Despatch. Now, everybody knows Port Elizabeth and Uitenhage. Despatch is sort of lost in translation between the two. And coming from PE as I do, and working in Uitenhage as I did, we used to bypass Despatch. And we spoke about it in a disparaging manner. But it produced an awful lot of Springbok rugby players and provincial rugby players. There was something in the water. Port Elizabeth produced creatives. We produced the John Carneys, the Athol Fugard's, and Despatch produced Rassie and what was his name? Donnie Gerber, amongst others. So it must have been something in the water. Now,
I can answer that for you.
Sure.
It lives and breathes rugby. So I mean, you're right. I didn't gloss over it. It became an important part of the foundation of Rassie Erasmus. How did this all come about? Because people think he's from Bloemfontein. To find out actually he's from Despatch, I think catches some people by surprise if you don't know him that well. And he grew up. There was no option but to play rugby because that was what Despatch was all about. Correct. The Despatch Rugby Club was the biggest thing in little honey Erasmus's life. He just dreamt about playing for Despatch. He didn't dream about playing for Eastern Province or the Springboks. He dreamt about playing for Despatch. The crazy thing is, he never did play for Despatch. But he played for Free State, he played for the Cats, he played for the Lions, he played for the Springboks. But he never actually got that goal, that initial childhood goal. He never materialized. But we talk about the way the town would come to a standstill when the home team was playing. What happened when they won the club championships? Little Despatch, which beat these big university sides with all of the money, they won. And Rassie, as a little boy, grew up with that winning culture. And so rugby was in his blood from the start.
Is there, or did you get to what his regrets were while writing the book? Was there one that stands out that if he goes, if I could go back?
It's making the Erasmus video. Not anticipating the fallout. In fact, it's not that it was that he shouldn't have made the Erasmus video.
Right.
He didn't fully appreciate what the impact would have been. So he would have done. He still says, "I needed to make the video." He's got a great line. He says, "If you need a different outcome, you have to do something different." And so making the Erasmus video where he analyzed the ref and gave all the feedback, and then distributed to a small group of people. So it was this inner core of like 8 people who got the video. And then from one of them, it got leaked out of there, not maliciously, not deliberately, not for any other reason than to show. So it's Nick Berry, the referee, who was the target. It's in the book, how he then sent it onto his agent to say, oh, this video has come up. And he sent it before he'd even watched it. He just sent it to his agent in Brisbane. And the agent in Brisbane then sent it on to a few other people. And it just spreads. So when they talk about it being leaked to the media and Rassie leaked it to the media, one thing we can say conclusively, because there's forensic evidence to show that he didn't, but they can plot, and it's all in the disciplinary inquiry. All the evidence is there, and I had access to all of that information. You can see the Vimeo, just analyzed because it went onto the Vimeo platform. You can see how in Brisbane it just starts exploding. So that's where somewhere there it got leaked to the media. But he regrets that happening. And now, with the benefit of knowing how these things happen, he would have been a lot more careful in controlling who had access to it. There is that regret.
I think this is the issue now with social media, or anti-social media, as I tend to call it. You have no control. And people don't think, they really don't. They say or publish something, and the moment they do and they get called out on it, then they go, oh, I didn't mean that, whatever that was. Well, if you didn't mean it, why did you say it? Take ownership and just deal with the fallout, as the played as the cards lay at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Or they say it got taken out of context. My question is what was the context? What is the context in which it was then intended? And they never have an answer to that one.
Exactly. Let's have a look at the disease that you mentioned earlier as we sort of wind down our chat. And if people, I've been talking around the book rather than about the context or the content. And there's reason for that, Dave, because I want people to go out and buy this.
Go read it.
I want them to read it, and I want them to hunt for things that you and I have now spoken about, and see if they can find it. It's a great gift. Whether you like rugby or not, I think that's immaterial. It's a story of a man who went above and beyond, and who brought himself back from, I don't want to say from the depths of despair, but he's pulled himself back into a position of almost being a superhero, specifically here in South Africa. But what's lovely. Sorry.
No, it's just that what's nice about Rassie is that he is a genuinely humble guy, and when I try to examine that particular aspect of him, the fact that he has become this almost superhero, he then would not allow that to be reflected in the book. So it's not there at all. And nor is the issue of him being a genius. Everybody I spoke to from rugby circles go, oh, Rassie's a genius. Oh, he's a genius. But it's his book and it's his voice. So I go, well, Rassie, how do we address this? He goes, no, Chom, that's Windgat. We're not. So we never could actually do that. Because and I appreciate why, but he doesn't see himself in that way. So the disease he's got is Wagner's disease, it's called. It's got that's the old name. The more modern name is a very long medical name, and I can't. It's in the book, and I can't remember it. But it's a very long medical name. It's much easier just to say.
And for those who want to look it up, it's on page 181, 181. Go and look at the name.
Okay, good. I should go and get my copy and read out the name. But it's he's got it in his throat, and it causes a constriction of the throat. So as he once told me, with the worst part of the illness, he had the throat of a young boy. It was so small, and in the 70s there wasn't actually a cure for it, and people died from Wagner's disease. And stress is one of the things that brings it. It's chronic, and so he lives with it. So he's on medication all the time, and every now and again he gets treated almost with chemotherapy tablets. So what it is, it's an autoimmune disease. The body fights itself for all the wrong reasons. And so he's got to manage this very, very carefully. The effect of the medication is he puffs up a lot. He gets embarrassed by that. People call him fat gat. When the Springboks lose, they go, fat gat, you're just sitting around eating all the time. And he gets so annoyed, but he can't react. He says that they don't know. But he manages it, and he manages it well. So that has been one of his challenges. And he was diagnosed just before the World Cup. So he went, and he was really unwell at the World Cup. But he managed it. Now he knows.
Now we know why.
Manage it.
Two last questions for you, David. One is the book is currently available. It's in hardback. It's a great read, and it's available in all major bookstores, I should imagine.
Yes, it is.
Have you been one, because your face, because of radio, you may not be as well known as Rassie is.
No, by no means am I as well known as Rassie. By
Right.
no
So
means.
do you then wander into the local bookstore, and if the book is this way on a shelf, do you turn it that way? Or do you then stand in the bookstore and go, oh, look, it's a book about Rassie, about with David O'Sullivan. I wonder what this is like.
No, I don't. I am. If I saw Nick Mallett's book ahead of mine, I might have changed it around, but I never did. Um, uh, but I have to say, it is enormously satisfying and surreal to walk into the bookshops and to see the big banners over the security sensors. They've got the big sleeves over them, and the Rassie book, and to see the prominence with which the bookstores have given it. And I gotta just say, the most massive thanks to all of the bookstores, particularly exclusive books. They just did us absolutely proud the way they presented it, and it is quite satisfying. I would always go in and just have a look to see how it was being presented, but I never wanted to go and interfere, because I thought, if somebody finds me doing it, I better not. I go and have a look, where the various exclusive books, they've got the charts of their sales at their particular bookstore. I was going to see where I am. So at the moment, I mean, it was always number one, and now Dion Meyer he's become number one. That's fine.
Fair enough.
If it's Dion Meyer, I'm happy.
Okay, so we've got just a few minutes left. Last question. This was a big project in your life. I know it affected Jackie, it affected the children because you had to lock yourself away.
No, it didn't affect them at all. I was writing at 3:00 in the morning. They didn't even know. It was known as pajama writing. Never affected them.
All right.
What was lovely is that my kids got so used to Rassie that they didn't see it as a big deal that Rassie Erasmus was walking around the house. They'd come home from school, he'd be sitting out on the patio catching up on emails, and they just go, oh, there's Rassie. And they'd wander over and have a chat to him and wander off. They took it in their stride.
Fair enough, as children sometimes do. But then the last question is, once this was down and dusted, you wrote the end, you sent it off to the publishers. Did it leave a hole? I mean, it's not... And how did you... You've got 2 minutes to tell me how you overcame that.
No, I didn't. I kept saying to the publisher, I'm bereft. I'm utterly bereft. Because I got on with all my other corporate work, the normal work that earns me money now that I've given up radio. I never stopped doing that. But it was just so enjoyable. And I loved thinking about what I was doing and thinking of new ways to write things. I loved just the excitement that I'm producing something that people are really going to enjoy. And then, and you're right, it ends so quickly where they go, you can't write anymore. Now what do I do? So I've been umming and eyeing about what's next. I've got a few books going, but ideas going, but I just want to make sure, because then we've got the wave of publicity and all of that. Then it was the World Cup. Now Rassie is back again, and interact with him, and so it never went away. But the writing process, it did leave me with a very big hole, which still hasn't been filled, David. Still hasn't been filled.
I've been chatting with David O'Sullivan, who together with Rassie has written Rassie, Stories of Life and Rugby, published by Macmillan. It's a great Christmas gift or end of year gift. Let's not be specific as to why you need to buy it. And if you don't have anybody to buy it for yourself. What the heck? You can gift it yourself. David, thank you so very much for chatting to me. And thanks for a ripping read, really and truly.
Thank you very much. And I'm just sorry that I have to write a book to get on your show.
There will be another time with another topic.
Okay.
My guest
Good one.
Today,
it's been lovely chatting, David. Thanks so much.
All right. My guest today has been David O'Sullivan here on In Conversation With.